Mashiach, shturim about Mashiach. And that's the famous occasion when the Rebbe said, Ich gib das Sibe jeder in Fanayich. I'm giving it over to each one of you. Tut alles was you can. Do everything you could to bring down Mashiach. The Rebbe said, mit 25 Jahren zurück, the Rebbe spoke, Chof Ches Nissen, that he's giving over the idea of bringing Mashiach to us, to people. And then a week and a half later, Shabbat Parshas Tazria, the Rebbe said what he wants. That we should learn about Mashiach. We should educate ourselves. We should become informed about Mashiach. So, there's a Yid in Eretz Yisrael, whose name is Pelis, who used to give out every week a pamphlet of the Rebbe's Torah, and put it out in the shuls and in the yeshivas. And he called it Dvar Malchus. And the Dvar Malchus, he had a sicha or two, and he had letters, all kinds of different things. So when the Rebbe started talking about Mashiach, he didn't ask too many questions. He prepared a Dvar Malchus. It was called Kuntres Yud Beis, the 12th Kuntres, in which he had 4 sichas of the Rebbe, 4 Yesoides dike sichas of the Rebbe, 2 from Perek Yud Aleph and 2 from Perek Yud Beis of Hilchos Malachim. The best, the most fundamental. I'm not going to say the best. The most fundamental. And he did it to give out in the shuls over at Yisrael. Obviously, he sent the Rebbe a copy. So Monday morning, the Rebbe went to Oyel, Mondays and Thursdays. Tough shit enough, the Rebbe was going Monday and Thursday. Monday morning, the Rebbe says to label before Oyel, Mivedos Telin Haint. I'm going to give this out tonight. In other words, make an exact replica of this. This is what I'm going to give out. So that night, Tezvav Sivan, the Tezvav year, that means 25 years ago today, Monday, same Kviyas, the Rebbe came from the Oyel, and the Rebbe gave the Kuntres. It was a bigger booklet, it was green, you remember? And there's the picture of the Rebbe himself holding his copy of the Dvar Malchus as he's walking out of shul. The Rebbe was very happy that they had, it was a total Isarusa Latata, prepared a pamphlet of the Rebbe's Torah Mashiach, 4 sichas, 4 of the very important sichas. There's 2 from Perek Yud Aleph, and 2 from Perek Yud Beis, Yesayis Dike sichas, very Yesayis Dike sichas, on Yom Mashiach Gula. And this gave the Rebbe, the Rebbe approved of that. This is what the Rebbe wanted. So 25 years ago today, the Rebbe gave us a kuntres to learn Yonah Mashiach or Geula and Mashiach. Mashiach and Geula Mashiach is zwei Welten. To hasten the common go to Geula Mitzvah Shleimim. So I'm mentioning it. Now, we finally caught up. Yeah, Mitzvah Friday, we'll learn a Mem from Lag Beimis. But today, we're learning a Sicha from Lag Beimis. 60 years ago this year, there was a Lag Beimis parade. Which means that Lag Beimis was Sunday. This year, Tavshinai involved. Lag Beimis is on Thursday. Tavshin Tezayin, 60 years ago this year, Lag Beimis was on a Sunday. There was a parade. And of course, we all know the background of the parades. First of all, the Rebbe made parades almost as soon as we came to America. One of the first things the Rebbe did when he came here was make parades. And I think, and I don't know, but I think that this is much more the Rebbe's idea than it is the Friedrich Rebbe's idea. But the Rebbe said many times, Azlis the Karta Halach B'nei Musa. You come to a state, you come to a place, you come to a block of land. So you go in its nimus, you adopt its culture. Not Chas v'Sholem, you adopt what's called Darkei HaAmorim, Goyish Evegen, God forbid. But you take the nimus that the people in the society in which you live have, and you use it for Avodas Hashem. So as soon as the Rebbe came here, and the Rebbe probably was well researched before he landed on the American shores, he'd been planning this probably for years and years. He understood the American mentality. And the first and biggest thing you have to know about American mentality is that everything is advertising. Propaganda, the Iker is Machon HaShturim. What's behind it doesn't matter. Make noise. It should be in the street. Was all wissen von der Ruf. There's an old expression, an American expression, there's no such thing as bad publicity. The only publicity is bad is non-publicity. Because as they're talking about you is already a good thing. So as soon as the Rebbe arrived, he undertook to do things to make advertising the Inyan of Yiddishkeit. And he made right away parades. Within a year of his being there, they used to march. They didn't necessarily do it like Beimer. The kids would march, and their first banners, if you could see the pictures, said, keep the Shabbos holy. Tavshin Beis, Tavshin Gimel. I just saw a kuntres that somebody prepared. Zelixon prepared, I think. We went to the various like Beimer parades, and it seems from that kuntres that there were no parades between Tavshin Gimel and Tavshin Yud Gimel. In other words, he speaks about the parades they made as soon as the Rebbe came, and the impression is they didn't make subsequent parades. I don't know, I'm sure he knows better than me, but it seems to me like the Rebbe would never have taken a 10-year hiatus from parades. There's probably don't know details. But parade was a big deal. Why? You take little children, and they march in the street, And it doesn't matter what they're saying, it doesn't matter what they're carrying, it matters what they're feeling. Being Jewish is not only a good thing, it's not only something to be proud of, it's something not even to be ashamed of. Like I always tell you the story, a guy told me, a friend of mine told me, that he went on Miftzayim, and he came into an office of a lawyer, who was then, the story happened 30 years ago when I was in yeshiva, 25 years ago, and this lawyer said, they asked him if he's a Jew, and he said, I'm a Jew, but I don't want to put on film, and I don't want you ever to come back to my office again, but before you leave, I need to tell you this. And he told him that he grew up in Machon in the 30s. And if you were Jewish, you didn't want anybody to know. Pashut didn't want people to know you were a Jew. So if you wore a yarmulke, you always wore a cap. If you wore tzitzis, you always put them inside. The idea that the goy should know you're a Yid was considered dangerous. And then the Bacharim arrived in Tafshin Aleph. They came Yemos from Shanghai. 9 Bacharim were allowed to come to Canada. And they settled in Montreal. They made a yeshiva. And they right away started doing the same pu'ulos the Rebbe was doing in New York, which was Nesibet Shabbos and Mitzvah Shah release time, which I'll talk about in a minute. And they made parades. And they took Yiddish Kinderlach and they marched in the streets. And he says he was a child who marched in those parades. He says the Lubavitch had ever made Jewish people proud. Instead of hiding and thinking that you're avoiding anti-Semitism by not telling people who you are, you proudly display yourself and avoid anti-Semitism with your pride. And then he kicked them out of the office. That's the end of the story. So like Be'emet parades is a Rebbe's Indian, and of course we all know that the first sample of a parade, the first case of a parade was the story with Tashlich, the Zalman Post and all the Shalom detailed. I've told you the story many times. The Rebbe arrived in Sivan Tafshin Aleph. So Tishrei, Tafshin Beis, they went to Tashlich. So they gathered about 80 men and boys to walk to the botanical gardens. And the Rebbe says, Nitazeh Gateman, that's not how you walk. How do you walk? When you get Tzvei, you walk in pairs. Let a Trach Getani for a moment. And sing a song. The first part of the Gzeire was difficult enough. The second part of the Gzeire was Toyu Shabbatayu Shabbatayu, to march on Eastern Parkway then in pairs like soldiers, and to sing was ridiculous, and they did it. And every Jew in Khan High School, about 80% of the neighborhood, observed it. And as I told you many times, the Rebbe, my father told me this, he never went back the same way he came. If he went with Eastern Parkway, he came back with Union. If he went with Union, he came back with President. So there's Mastamba has made a Pnimim. I'm sure there's reasons, Pnimiistic reasons, not to go back the same way you come. But practically, he maximized the number of people who would see them singing and dancing. And this went on for 25 years. And a Yid told Zalman Posner that what the Rebbe accomplished by them walking in the street and singing is what he heard. He didn't hear what they were singing. He heard, I'm proud to be a Jew. He says, so by me there's a fire, he says. And the fire is dormant, it's verschlafen. And when they walked by singing, I'm proud to be a Jew, that little ember ignited and burst into flames. So parades is mamish the Rebbe's hazach. Mamish the Rebbe's. In other words, the Rebbe is not only his idea, but it's his spirit. That in America, it's nixturim. Everything is nixturim. In the papers. So that made parades. And of course, the parades were strongly linked to the mitzvah shah. Rabbi Yankel Hecht, Al Vashalom, J.J. Hecht. I heard a tape once of Yud Beis Tammuz, where the Rebbe says, Yankel Hecht is da, he wanted to say L'chaim. And the Rebbe chuckles. Schreibt in paper, as a 10,000 Kinder, as if the Rebbe didn't know. Schreibt in paper, in the newspaper, he wrote that he has 10,000 children in the East program. Why did the Rebbe mention the papers? Yedezach, every word by the Rebbe is genoy, it's precise and with a purpose. But that's how the Rebbe said, schreibt in paper, as a 10,000 Kinder. But the Rebbe himself was so involved in the release time. In the 40s, the Rebbe himself oversaw the curriculum that they taught these little children, and he made sure they had a piece of cake and a drink. The Rebbe they served the kids, the Rebbe personally was involved in the mitzvah shah. I heard a story once. The Rebbe walked into the Zal on a Wednesday. One bocher was sitting and learning. And the Rebbe says to him, what are you doing here? So he says to the Rebbe, whatever he's doing, the Rebbe says there's no such thing. That everybody has this chayvas gavra, the mitzvah shah from game. And everybody went, and they told the kids out of the government allowed that you take the kids out of the public school for an hour a week, sachakum. And you have to take them to a religious institution, chas v'shalom, that the public school should be contaminated with Shmei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and teach them about the Eibush. And for some Yiddish Kinderlach, that wasn't their entire Yiddishkeit. And the accomplishment of this was like I saw a film of a Yid whose name I can't remember. He lived in England for many years. He just moved here. He retired. Cousins is his name. He was the Manal. He was principal of the Yechidid in London for many, many years. So he was a Bacher. He was a Chassidish Bacher. Obviously, he was in 770. And he had a birthday. And his birthday fell on Wednesday. So he decided that since on a birthday there's so many things you have to do. You have to learn more nigla, you have to learn more chassidus, you have to be malavadiches. So he figured he'll take that Wednesday off from the mitzvah show. And he told this to the Rebbe in Yechidus in anticipation of his birthday. The Rebbe says to him, what? On your birthday you're taking away mitzvah show? He says, Zichazos the game. Not only should you go, you should make it the most special mitzvah show ever. And the Rebbe said to him, when you gather those children together, the Rebbe said to him, and you make with them a bracha, and you say with them Shema Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu was an Eich Makana, the Rebbe said. Moshe Rabbeinu was jealous. Get children together, what are you doing? Making a bracha, you're saying Kishma, he's going to remember it. The child. Gave him a piece of cake. These are obnoxious public school kids who are making trouble, and you make a bracha with them. The Rebbe said, Moshe Rabbeinu was jealous of a bracha that goes mitzvah show. So the Lag BaOmer parades came with the mitzvah show, with the Wednesday hour, with the release time. So consequently, if there was the middle of the week Lag BaOmer, there was no parade, because the children from the public schools could simply not participate, because they were in school, they could only come on Sundays. So the real center, the Gilas HaKesedes, the essence, the sign of success and failure in a Lag BaOmer parade is how many children you bring Pasha from the public schools. And the Rebbe felt that bringing a child from a public school to a Lag BaOmer parade is a tzolas nefoshes mamash. So if you have 50,000 people and you have 1,000 public school kids, the parade was for them. Of course, that's a very big simplification. There's a also with the Rebbe, there was a parade, and of course Yankel Hecht was under the gun, right? Because the Rebbe would criticize him, and he was so concerned, he was so apprehensive that the parade should be like Haslach Rabbe, and the Rebbe should have a little nachas. I think he was able to go into the Rebbe when he wanted. I don't think J.J. Hecht, needed permission to go to the Rebbe. So it was after the parade and after the Oyel, the evening of Lag BaOmer. I don't know what year it was, in the early memories. They made a parade in Eastern Parkway, and then they closed off Empire Boulevard, and they made a fair where they had rides, and the children went on rides. The Rebbe's car went to the Oyel, passed by the fair where the children were going on rides. So the Rebbe says, J.J. Hecht, he was driving by, and there was a Ferris wheel. A Ferris wheel. You know how a Ferris wheel works? When the kids have to get off at the bottom, the people at the top have to dangle. So the Rebbe says, I look up to the top of the Ferris wheel. The Ferris wheel stopped. I look up to the top of the Ferris wheel. The poor kid stuck up there because they're letting the kids down from the bottom. And the kid was afraid. And the Rebbe said, he whispered to himself, Shema Yisrael. And the Rebbe could read his lips. The Rebbe saw what he said. The Rebbe said, Fademat hatzegalein de ganze Zach. One child, just Shema Yisrael, hatzegalein de ganze Meise. So we understand what a parade is. So parades by the Rebbe were a very, very big deal. And whenever there was a Sunday, there was a parade. And of course the Rebbe participated in Pashat Begufay. He participated in the parades.